So, the last topic today deals with something that former President Trump brought up as a topic by which he's running on, which is a 10% credit card cap proposal. And that has a lot of different edges to it. Can you please open that up to us?
Sure. So, Howard, as you, above all people, know, at Deep Knowledge Investing, we have very firm opinions on policy. We don't comment on politics. And
I make sure of that usually.
you do, you're great about that. So, a couple of weeks ago, we were very critical of Team Blue for their plan to control and limit food prices. And what we said is if you try to impose price controls on food, you will not end up with people getting lower grocery bills. You will end up with food shortages. Now, for those of you on Team Red, we are about to criticize them for the exact same reason. So, let's talk about why President Trump's 10% credit card cap rate proposal is a bad idea. First, let's talk about why it sounds like a good thing, right? Credit card interest rates are very, very high, frequently above 20%. And so if you are running if you have a credit card bill and you're running a balance there, at the end of the month, your credit card company is going to charge you a lot for interest, a very high price, and it's punitive. And so, when President Trump says, I'm going to prevent them from charging more, people like that. They like to hear, wait, my bills will go down. Just like Team Blue a couple weeks ago was saying, hey, you don't like paying high grocery bills? Don't worry. We'll take care of that for you. And like, no, that leads to shortages. Well, just like Team Blue's bad policy by limiting food prices will lead to food shortages, guess what? If Team Red tries to limit credit prices, we will end up with credit shortages. So here's what's not going to happen. What's not going to happen is people who are running balances on their credit cards are not all of a sudden going to see lower rates and lower bills. What will happen is you'll have a shortage of credit. And anybody whose credit score doesn't start with an 8 or, something in the high sevens is going to be looking at potentially losing access to credit. You're not going to get lower bills. You're going to have the credit card company say, wait a minute, we are now staring at, US credit card consumer debt right now is over $1 trillion and delinquencies are starting to rise. So if you tell these credit card companies you can't get the price that you need to make all of this work, you can't, earn interest on people who are very likely to default, the credit card companies are simply going to say, okay, we understand. Then we will no longer extend unprofitable credit. And you could say, okay, well, wait, why is that a problem? Here's why that's a problem. It's really easy to say, hey, wait a minute, I carry a balance on my credit card and paying 22%, 23%, 25%, whatever the number is. They could say, wow, this is really hard. But I'm going to tell you what else it is. It's a lot cheaper than bouncing your rent check or, bouncing your cell phone check or something like that. When you are not able to pay your bills on time, your services get shut down or you face late fees, or if your check bounces, you end up with late fees from from your vendor or your landlord. You end up with interest expense. You end up with bounce check fees from both your bank and the other bank. And it can end up costing people, you miss a rent payment or bounce a rent check, it can cost people hundreds of dollars. And so it's really easy to say, oh, well, we hate those evil credit card companies because they're charging too much. Yeah, that's fun, right? It's really fun to say, hey, they're bad people. But the truth is, people are taking advantage of that because it's cheaper than bouncing their rent check or their car payment, right? And this is cheaper. And by the way, if your car gets repossessed because you don't make those payments on time and you can't get to work, you have financial problems bigger than a 20% interest rate. So the key point here is whenever the government tries to limit the price of something, you don't end up with lower prices, you end up with shortages. We could end up with food shortages from Team Blue and credit shortages from Team Red. Neither one will help consumers. They will make things worse for low income people. And that's something that we're against. Now, for people who are saying, okay, wait, this sounds terrible either way. What do I do? Okay, here is our advice. Our advice is do everything that you can to try to live below your means. Try to pay off that high interest rate credit card debt. I get it. I know it's hard to do. I know that between higher rent, higher fuel prices, insane grocery store prices, I understand it's hard. But this is your best path out. Do all that you can to try to spend less than you make and try to pay down those really big credit card bills. And in the event that you can't, take a look, right? What is better for you? Is it better for you to miss a payment or be late with a payment? Or is it better for you to pay that, punitive 20% and then make the decision that's best for you? We get that for some people, it's going to be really hard and, it may take you some time to work at it, but that is your best path forward. But I assure every one of you who is suffering through financial distress right now, more government regulation will make your lives worse, not better. And that's, this is just, we're trying to do every week a little basic financial education for people. And, Howard, listen, you deal with people who are buying residential property, commercial property, people making maybe some of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. And you
Mhm.
have to deal, most of these people need mortgages. So you're dealing with credit, you're dealing with people making big financial decisions. You're looking at people's individual finances. What are you seeing in the South Florida property market on this?
So focus most of my time on commercial. And what I'm finding is that lending institutions are exceptionally careful about who they're doing business with. We went from last year where there was very little paper available to first time investors because the banks really didn't want to take a risk on it to now uh, you've got a swing of 5% at any given point for requirements depending on whether or not you qualify at certain levels. So there's they're lending, but they're being very, very careful about who they work with and the parameters by which they stake. So I think that the banks they remember 2008 all too well. So they're being very, very careful about how they go about business.
So that line, they're being careful about how they go out their business. To me, that's the key thing, and it proves our point. So I'm going to wave my magic wand here, which is really just a pen, and say you are now the credit manager at a large South Florida bank. Howard, what are current 30-year mortgage rates for people with, let's just say, average to good credit?
So so average to good credit, I've seen rates uh, as low as the upper fives
Okay,
for
so
people.
let's say 5 3/4.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's say I'm a government regulator and I come to you. You are now the head of credit at a South Florida bank, and I say, yeah, I see that you're charging some people 5 3/4 for their mortgage rate for a 30-year fixed. New government regulation, you can now charge only 4%, nothing more than 4%. So here's my question, Mr. Bank Portfolio Manager. Is everybody going to start getting lower mortgage payments or a bunch
No,
of
there's going to be,
people not
oh,
going to
they're
get
going to be,
mortgages?
no, it's going to limit the number of people we can do business. And
So in
it's
other
simple.
words, a whole bunch of people who
Oh,
could pay
yeah.
5 3/4, they're going to get no mortgage at all.
So think about it this way also. The multiplier effect of this whole thing is as credit changes, so does buying. And when you're buying, let's say in the realm that I'm working in, whether it's a home, an investment, and you don't qualify, it's not that you're rolling into something else because you're not going to get it. So either you're going to go with hard money loans, which are tremendously more expensive, or you're going to go away from it, period. So you've got, and think about this. I mean, if a certain percentage drops out of the investment field for real estate, what is that going to do for the industry? There's going to be fewer agents, there's going to be fewer firms because the demand's not going to be there.
And that's a big deal. And beyond that, you're going to have a whole bunch of people who want to buy their own home and will be
Mm-hmm.
priced out of it by the government. They will be told that at the price you would need to pay to buy your home, you are not allowed to do it. You will not end up
Yeah.
with lower price credit. You will end up with credit shortages. Every time the government tries to determine the price of something, you create inefficiencies. You don't end up with poor people better off. You end up with poor people being denied services, or in the case of Team Blue's plans, you end up with them being denied food.
Right.
But either way, this is how you create shortages of goods and services.
Now you need government to stay in their lane, so to speak. And, as much as we hate credit card companies charging exorbitant fees, your answer is exactly right. And that is be responsible for your budget and do not hyperextend. This is the wrong, it's never a good time, but this is definitely the wrong time to be doing that. So we've got to pare back that trillion
Yeah, there
somehow.
you go. All right, so I think we're at the end here. We'll get ourselves wrapped up. First of all, want to thank Alex for joining us today and the great work that you and Andrew do every week. So glad to have you on the 5 things. The contributions you guys make are incredible. We are thrilled with the work you guys are doing. Want to thank Robb Fahrion for being our regular host, even though he had to miss this week, but his seat was ably filled by Howard Friedland. Howard, thank you so much for joining us as our guest star and host.
Glad to be here.
And for all of you watching, thank you so much. We know your time is valuable. We appreciate you spending it with us. If you want to like, subscribe, comment, we'd love to have your support. But, hey, just like the government doesn't get to boss us around or shouldn't be able to, you do whatever you want. We're good either way. So thank you, everyone. And we will look forward to seeing you next week.